Let's get right into it. This is a tournament that has lived up to the billing, despite some of the hurdles or challenges that it faced during preparations and all. But the question will be, as the CEO of Cricket Kenya, what's your assessment of the tournament thus far?
Well, the tournament, I believe, is going pretty well. This is the inaugural match of the Continent Cup in Africa. Initially, we had 6 teams that were set to participate, and then two pulled out at the very last minute. That's Nigeria and Tanzania. And now we have Rwanda, Botswana, Kenya, and Uganda playing in this match. Hopefully, next year we'll have more teams coming into play. It's going to be a rotational tournament. So next year it might not be here, probably in some other country somewhere else. But right now it's doing pretty well. The games are really, really exciting. And as you mentioned, um, Kenya and Uganda are about to take the pitch in a few minutes. And they are 1-1. And this is the third round in this series. Hopefully, we'll win. I mean, I have to be biased. That's big, right?
Okay, let's look at the derby. We need to talk about the derby. There's still so many things to address, but the derby is a big one. I said earlier, but that both teams have won a game apiece against each other. This time around, it is the third mate right here, and the last time out, it was a spanking. It must be said. What do you make of the Mingogo derby? I know where your your preference would definitely lie, but what do you make of the derby as a bigger platform for African cricket?
I think it's important to develop rivalries, sports rivalries within countries, within clubs or countries. Anything that any sport, any game between Kenya and Uganda is always a big match, a big game. It doesn't matter whether it's cricket or football or basketball or swimming or whatever you call it. It's always a big game, and that rivalry is really good to help us develop our sport because one, you said at the beginning, we're looking for bragging rights, but at the same time, it helps us develop our game so that we don't just sit on our laurels where we are and develop our sport and become more competitive in the region, not only just in East Africa, but we can then, play against other teams on the continent, whether it's Nigeria or Namibia or Zimbabwe, if we ever get to that point. Um, it's a good thing to look forward to.
Okay. Now, let me get your thoughts as an administrator, because more often than not, when we speak to the players, they have their own view of how the sport can be developed across Africa. We've seen the Kwibuka T20 women's tournament in Kigali that ended yesterday, and how fascinating it was. The quality of cricket on display. We can see that of T20, the men's tournaments taking place in Nairobi as well. As an administrator now, what's your assessment of cricket in Africa in terms of its development, and how well or how further can the sport be developed across Africa?
Well, let me put it this way. I've only been with Cricket Kenya for the last 4.5 months, so still learning some of the intrigues of sport of cricket in the country and on the continent. But what I would say is, while it is true, players also have their perspective of how things would happen, and tournaments are always good. One of the biggest things that we have to get in place is we need to improve our governance structures. Once you have those governance structures, they provide a platform within which you can perform to the best of your ability. Then everybody knows what is happening. We can't just have games to play when there's no platform we're coming off. Once you get your governance structures in place, then you'll set up your development plan, your development program, and then you can target schools, you can target clubs, you can make cricket more accessible to people. And then I would go into looking to the local governments or national governments and finding what supports they can give us to help us grow the game. One of the big challenges we face with cricket is equipment and then accessibility. And in Kenya, cricket, a lot of cricket is played in private clubs. So do the players then have access to those clubs? And when we do have a public facility, then do we have the equipment required to play? Um, A third point I would take is I'd work on the coaches because better coaches make better players. Sometimes we focus on the players too much and we're just looking at numbers, but we don't have people to coach them. So get coaches trained out into the park, get them into the country, get them into the fields, into the schools, coach teachers, bring them onto the bandwagon so that we can all uh, play together and grow our game. And then finally, you end up having all these competitions that we have, these tournaments, because that's the apex of what you're trying to do. Once you have your development structure, and then your development structure, then you have teams playing against each other competitively. You develop pathways for people to play, and that's where you end up having derbies like this one between Kenya and Uganda.
Oh, okay. That was quite enlightening. It must be said. Let me put you on the spot now because, as I said, it's a big one. The whole of Africa is looking forward to it. Talking about Uganda against Kenya, and it's gonna take place in a matter of minutes. So I'll put you on the spot. Who gets this?
You're not putting me on the spot at all. Kenya definitely gets it.
Okay.
It's going to be a tricky game, but I think we'll take it.
It's gonna be a tricky game, you said?
Yes, it'll be a tricky
Okay.
game. I mean, it's 1-on-1. We've won one, they've won one, so we're definitely everybody's
Okay.
coming in at the top of their game, and we're looking to get into the final on Wednesday.
Okay. Just before I let you go, the women's tournament in Kigali ended yesterday, talking about Kwibuka. You have one or two things to say, especially concerning the champions, Rwanda.
Yes, Rwanda has come a long way from when it first started playing, and for them to win the championship yesterday was amazing, and it's good for the development of the sport. Kenya came third in that tournament, and we need to put a lot more attention onto women's cricket if we really want our cricket to grow. There are a lot of socio-economic or socio-cultural things that women face once they get into sport. But
Okay.
I guess showing that they can go out there and compete and gradually come from where they started 6-7 years ago to winning the Kwibuka tournament yesterday is a mark of their resilience, I should say. And kudos to them.